This is a secure channel. The killer robot Minotaur shouldn't be able to listen in now. I don't know how much longer we can keep running. If you're out there and you can hear us, this is Vaguely Scientific. I am Derek, and I am recording a podcast, not calling for help. And joining me as always in this wonderful place we don't call a digital prison fraught with atrocities no man should ever have to know, is Jim T. Scientist the Scientist. Hi, Jim.
Everything is totally normal here, as it's always been.
Okay, I think we tricked them for a moment. We seem to have made contact with someone. It says here your name is Jeremiah? Hi, Jeremiah.
Hi. I don't understand this pop-up I just got. I was doing some online shopping, and then suddenly there were these little avatars of you guys.
That's great. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. This is very important.
Is this one of those jib jabs?
I need you to play along as we pretend to record the show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, while I inspect the privacy firewall, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. Hart Mountain in Wyoming is a mountain that seems to have slid several kilometers from where it started. Around 50 million years ago, a nearby mountain-forming event lifted the ground beneath Hart Mountain and caused the entire region to slide downhill. It slid about 25 miles, and scientists are still not entirely sure how the huge slab of rock that contained Hart Mountain was able to slide intact for so far.
So when you say slide, does that mean the mountain just moved?
Yeah, like the whole thing just sort of became detached from the ground and snowboarded its way down the hill.
So like a rock slide, but it's a mountain slide.
Yeah, it's like a rock slide, but it is just one big rock.
That's efficient, I guess.
It is. It really is, actually, now that you mention
Carpool. It's a bunch of rocks carpooling.
Yeah.
Oh, mountain pool. Carpool. That's great. Oh, man. Well, speaking of vehicular travel, I guess.
I really just now noticed that I put several kilometers and then 25 miles, and I'm kind of mad about that.
Oh, do you want to redo it?
No, this is going in the episode.
Oh, okay. Cool. We show our scars.
Yeah.
Well, question 1 this week is, what do gremlins have against airplanes?
Well, my cultural touchstone for gremlins is the Bugs Bunny cartoon that has the little gremlin.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm going to say that the reason gremlins don't like airplanes is just because they're jerks.
That's fair.
So they're jerks for not enjoying air travel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think they just want to be troublesome. I think that they see these cool things that they can break, and it will hurt or kill lots and lots of people, and they're like, hey, sign me up, it's time to go.
So my cultural touchstone for gremlins are the Gremlins movies.
Oh, I forgot about those.
and also, more related to this question, the Twilight Zone episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner. And in both of those examples, I think, Jim, you are correct. They are just jerks.
Mm-hmm. Well, the funny thing about the William Shatner Twilight Zone episode is that I don't believe, if I remember correctly, I don't think that the gremlin ever really says anything. He's just kind of like there.
No, it's just ripping the plane apart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually really remember that from the Simpsons parody of it with the school bus.
True,
but
that tends to be how that sort of thing works. Like, I can't watch the movie The Shining anymore just because there are a couple of bits in the Treehouse of Horror episode that just kind of fit too seamlessly into the movie. Yeah. Like the give me the bat, give me the bat, give me the bat, boo, and too much work and not enough play makes me something. Go crazy.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do.
It's the Shinnin. Do you want us to get sued?
It's It's perfect.
So, all right, I went in an interesting direction with this because I have more references to literary history than I expected to have, and I just found that kind of fascinating. So I tend to like to look up mythical creatures and find the cultural origins of them. And when we're talking about gremlins, I was like, cool, we can read about like goblins and little fairy creatures and stuff. And I came to a realization that I didn't know before reading about this, but gremlins aren't really that old.
Yeah.
The idea of gremlins comes from the 1920s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really surprised to find this out as well, because I assumed that it was something that was sort of attached to Fey lore,
Right.
maybe something that sort of had migrated from other modes of transportation, like boating or what have you. And it turns out that this is like a relatively new phenomenon, I guess.
Yeah. Do.
Now I need to look up something, because we were talking about the cultural touchstones, and seeing as you are on the internet and I'm still looking at things on the internet, my cultural touchstone is that my high school mascot was the gremlin.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so originally my thought was, well, this was a local team, and although they were very good, they never quite got to nationals level or any sort of reason to travel anywhere that was not reached by bus. So my assumption is they do not like airplanes because it makes them think of mild failure.
I love it.
But now I want to see when it was built, to see if there was some sort of like historical relevancy. Yeah, the school itself, before they picked gremlins. And because it used to be that in World War II, they would, in an attempt to create camaraderie, they would blame any sort of difficulty on their airplanes, especially in the Royal Air Force, as being the end result of gremlins, just to make sure that there was no animosity between people that were in the Air Force. It was different. It was a different thing to say, man, my propellers aren't working the way that I want them to. It must be those gremlins, than to be Tom.
Sure. Well, it was a way to explain mechanical failure that they didn't have a chance to investigate, too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that they took that and used it as a motivational technique in workshops. And it reminded me, I saw a poster that had like a little cartoon drawing of a gremlin that said, "Square corners, gremlins can play. Round corners, gremlins stay away." And the idea being,
Interesting.
Make sure your corners are flush.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of the Carol never wore safety glasses poster.
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of how common it was, which...
Well, it's funny because one of the things that I was reading is that a lot of times the things that they blamed on gremlins were things that were really inexplicable. Now the one that I'm going to recite here, I feel like could potentially be apocryphal. I really don't know for sure. But basically what happened was that this plane was flying normally and one of its engines cut out. And like they had to do an emergency landing very, very quickly, and they were pretty close to home base. But when they actually landed, like when they touched down on the runway, the engine turned back on. And it's like,
of course.
Well, how do you even explain that?
Yeah, that could be a gremlin.
I mean, I could theoretically explain it by saying like maybe the impact of the landing gear hitting the ground jostled the engine back to life somehow. But like, I mean, that is just weird.
Well, the like analogy for airplanes and such is pretty much the same thing as bugs in a computer, which we say now, but that's because there used to be actual bugs in the great big computer that would cause
it was a moth, right?
Those issues. Yes. And so my assumption now is just that gremlins get stuck in airplanes and killed at some point in the history. And that's
why we never find them.
Yeah, that's why we never find them. That's why the engine was giving us any trouble, because it was essentially bird strike, but with a gremlin, and then maybe all the pieces came out. There's also a thing that I read just to give it a little bit of a joke, Roald Dahl actually served in the Royal Air Force and brought worldwide attention to the idea of gremlins when he wrote a children's novel on it that was literally called The Gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
And
interesting.
of course, they were tiny men who lived in RAF fighter planes with their whole families. Apparently, Disney really loved the idea of that, and Dahl sent a manuscript which then had a couple of things that were changed up with it. Dahl was unhappy with it and reworked it, and it seemed like that it really wasn't working for a film. However, they did publish one in a picture book later, and it sold well and everything, but he was not happy with how the Disney deal went. So perhaps another reason why gremlins do not like airplanes is, again, the mild failure of Hollywood.
So I have an earlier literary reference, and actually the first recorded use of the word gremlins in publication. And there's evidence that even before this, in the 1920s, the term gremlin was used in the Royal Air Force to describe lower ranking officers who are saddled with thankless jobs and depressive assignments and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But the first time that we actually see the word gremlin published is in a 1929 poem, Flight Lieutenant Hiawatha, which appeared April 10th, 1929, in an issue of the journal Aeroplane.
Okay.
And I thought this was fascinating. I'm going to read a segment of it from you. I studied English literature in college, so I don't know how interesting this is going to be to anybody else, but I was fascinated to find out Flight Lieutenant Hiawatha is in trochaic tetrameter, which is a direct parody to the Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, which chronicles the fictional adventures of the Ojibwe warrior Hiawatha, who was a real person, but this is more a collection of Iroquois legends and not a historic accounting. But fairly famous poem. So it starts with the speaker saying, essentially, I'm paraphrasing so I don't read the entire poem to you, but if you ask me why all the people in the area are grumbling and grousing, I'll tell you there are many ranks in the Royal Air Force. And he describes the high-ranking officers, and then he goes on to describe the low-ranking officers, saying, little thanks for all the labor, yet they are both skilled and many men with many talents. They are those below the rank of down below the squadron leader. They are but a herd of gremlins who do all the flying, gremlins who do much instructing, work shunned by the wing commanders, work both trying and unpleasant. It's important to note that the poem does not use gremlins to describe mythical creatures, but rather the workers who are unappreciated. And that, to me, is an answer of why did gremlins eventually evolve to hate airplanes, is because they put all this work into them that nobody appreciated.
Yeah.
That's certainly something that I've seen even in human beings.
Yeah. What do you
put in all
mean?
this work.
The last note I have that I want to touch on briefly is even in the Royal Air Force, they don't actually know where the word gremlin came from. There are a lot of speculations, but none of them are actually verified. Many of them are claimed to be verified by the authors of several books. So I have a list of a few. John W. Hazen states that some people derive the name from the Old English word gremian, which means to vex. In a book called Spirits, Fairies, Leprechauns, and Goblins, an encyclopedia, Carol Rose attributes the name to a portmanteau of Grimm's fairy tales and Fremlin beer. And this is plausible because, as Paul Quinion says, it could also be a blend of the word goblin and the manufacturer of the most common beer available to the RAF in the 1920s, Fremlin, suggesting the beer would cause mechanics to make errors.
Okay.
The last suggested origin is Grimmelkin, which is a word that usually refers to witches or crones, but appears
That
in
makes
Shakespeare's
sense.
Macbeth as the name of a demon.
Right.
And those are all equally plausible, and there's no way to prove it one way or the other.
I think that's kind of fun, though.
Yeah.
But the real question is, why do they hate the planes so much? And I had some thoughts about this, besides the fact that they're just jerks.
Yeah. Which is established.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Scientific fact.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about is the fact that maybe they just want to eat the planes. Like,
Ooh.
there was that guy that ate a plane once. Maybe the gremlins just are hungry for
Right.
planes.
I mean, their diet could subsist on metal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that guy who ate an entire plane looks at planes he did not eat and then gets upset with them because, man, another one got away from me?
Why aren't you in my belly? Was he a gremlin?
I wonder if that person was part gremlin.
Oh, I know he
And their
didn't go to my
ancestry.
high school.
Apparently, Jeremiah is full gremlin.
Another thing I was thinking about is maybe they don't like war, because a lot of these gremlin stories come from various military, like, the RAF, of course. And so maybe the gremlins are like, hey, if these airplanes aren't flying, then they're not going to be fighting each other. And so we've solved the war problem. Little did the gremlins know that we still had tanks.
I like the idea that they hate war so much that they're okay with killing people for having wars.
Yeah. It's like in Futurama where Bender's like, we shall make them learn of our peaceful ways by force.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, it's the
God.
it's the robots deciding that, humanity are responsible for all the evil in the world, so we must kill humans.
Well, the opposite problem is possible to where they were fighting the RAF. So is there the chance that perhaps they were just really on the side of the Germans because they're
They could have
bad things?
Well, there was a lot of occultist stuff going on in World War II. So we could lean into that and say they were actually a super secret genetic experiment.
Yes, of course.
I think Hellboy touches on that.
I
Right.
think you're right. One other thing I was thinking about is that maybe they're trying to protect birds. Maybe the gremlins and the birds are good friends, and they're like, hey, these planes keep bumping into birds. If we just destroy the planes, then the birds will be fine. And so they're like, yeah, humans, no big deal.
Yeah, similar to my bird strike theory.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, this one I thought was probably the most interesting of the ones that I was thinking about. It's just the idea that the gremlins see airplanes as an affront to nature and decide to strike back at us. Because, as the old saying goes, if God had wanted man to fly, then he would have given him wings. And so the gremlins are like, no, you are not allowed in this domain. You are supposed to be on the ground. And so they just go after the airplanes.
Not only are you spitting in the face of grand design by learning how to fly, you're using it to fight each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that maybe that one's the most plausible, where they're just like, hey, quit sullying our beautiful skies with your stupid war.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because you don't hear about, like, an Airbus having gremlins. It's always, like, the RAF and other war stories and things like that.
I mean, the Gremlin was manufactured in 1970, and it wasn't really that popular, as far as I know.
The AMC Gremlin,
The
vehicle.
AMC Gremlin, yeah.
I could not, for the life of me, remember which car company made that.
AMC. It's a
It's very
two-door
defunct.
station wagon.
Yes.
I like them because they're goofy.
Now, how did they do in a fight against the Reliant Robin?
Well, I don't know.
Implying
That's
there
the
was a
bird
fight.
rivalry. Implying there was a fight. Well, it's canon now. He said it on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really fun to think about the idea that there is an intelligence behind equipment malfunctions. It's one of those things that I feel like we still do to this day because we personify everything.
Yeah.
I remember when we were in grade school and the computer lab printer just decided one day to start printing out dozens of pages of just garbled text. And we're like, this printer's alive and is angry about something. And so we were sort of like pretending there was a ghost, and we were trying to give it like little trinkets that we made out of paper, and it's like none of this is doing any good because it's just a software malfunction. But we were like so invested in the happiness of the printer that we kept on pretending it was alive. And it's like, this is what I think of when I think of these gremlin stories, where these pilots who are very likely extremely attached to their vehicles, and they're probably very invested in the well-being of these machines, being that they are flying them into combat. They personify their equipment to the point where it's like, if something goes wrong, it's not because these are sophisticated machines that have a lot of moving parts. It's because something external has attacked this machine. And I just think that's such a fun idea.
Humans do tend to ritualize things.
Yeah.
That, and also seeing patterns when there aren't any. And also another aspect of that is the idea that humans really have this self-centric kind of attitude toward a lot of things. So like, if you're having a bad day, it's got to be that something is working against you specifically. It can't just be, random chance and you got unlucky.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if a mechanic did make a mistake, we don't want to own up to that.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks, in that sense, it speaks to the camaraderie between the pilots and their mechanics, where it's like, well, clearly my mechanic is top notch and definitely wouldn't have allowed this problem to happen. And so this is definitely something that is external to both of us. And I think that's kind of neat too, because they trust their mechanics so implicitly.
We're talking about like World War II, World War I era, dogfighting pilots and stuff. There was a very big team mentality between a pilot and their crew at the time. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
The last thing I wanted to mention was just sort of in line with the last thing, is that I think it would be really fun, and I haven't done this because I didn't think of it until we started talking about this, but I think it'd be really fun to go through and see if there's any sort of modern variation to the idea of a gremlin that, I don't know, maybe attaches itself to the internet, or like, for example, yesterday there was a big outage on the internet. And it's like, well, we know why this happened and we know how they fixed it, but it's like, does anyone think there's a ghost in the machine, as they say? And I think it'd be really fun to see some of that modern folklore that sort of ties into the idea of these little, creatures that are causing mischief.
Isn't demon a computer term?
I think it might be tied to computers in some way. I'm not really sure what it is, though.
It is a type of computer program that runs in the background, performing various tasks without direct interaction from the user.
Oh,
is the task manager a gremlin?
Well, it's a demon, apparently.
Yeah.
But if it glitches, it could be a gremlin.
That reminds me of the fact that there was a character in Reboot. I think they called her Damon, but I assume it's meant to be the same type of
it's
program.
Daemon.
Yeah. But
yeah.
In Reboot, there was a very serious computer virus named that, which I think is kind of a fun reference.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try to look into some of this modern folklore now, because I'm curious. Well, with that first question out of the way, I got a cool middle segment for us today called World's Best World.
Woo.
Oh, wow.
This is the segment where we look at all kinds of really interesting places on Earth that make you say, that shouldn't be happening. So this is one of my favorites. And so we're going to be traveling to one of the coldest, driest, most inhospitable places on the planet, which is, of course, Antarctica. More specifically, there is a spot where it looks like the ice itself is bleeding, and it's called Blood Falls, which makes sense. And if you ever see pictures of this, it really does look a lot like blood. Now, it's not, which is great news, because if it was, that would be wow. Anyway.
Especially Iceland blood. That's just straight up dark magic.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But of course, it is Antarctica, so who knows? But we do actually know why the water looks like blood. So the water that's pouring out of Taylor Glacier is red. And as the name suggests, it looks unnervingly similar to blood. When it was first discovered in 1911, scientists assumed that the color came from algae, because algae do love doing kind of weird things. But no, actually, the explanation is way cooler than that. And so is the glacier, because it's made of Ice.
Ah.
Anyway, so millions of years ago, there was a salty, iron-rich lake that got trapped beneath the glacier. With no sunlight, almost no oxygen, and no connection to the rest of the world, the water became its own little microbial underworld. As the water seeped through the cracks in the ice, the iron in it was able to hit open air, and it immediately oxidized, basically rusting instantly. And it resulted in a waterfall that looks like something right out of a vampire movie. The water is so salty that it won't freeze, even in Antarctic temperatures. And it also contains some really ancient extremophile microbes that survive without oxygen and metabolize sulfur and iron. If you ever get a chance to visit, which you probably won't because these valleys are extremely remote and they're heavily protected and they're very scientifically sensitive, but if you do ever get to visit this place, you're going to see one of the strangest, most eerie natural features anywhere on Earth.
I like that we mentioned Hellboy earlier because I feel
I
feel like that would fit in that movie.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it is such a weird looking phenomenon. And we were talking about this yesterday, and I was like, I wonder if you can see it on Google Earth, and you found it right away. And
yeah
you can even see it from
falls.
space. Yeah.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what are the surrounding areas and what is the thing that I'm looking at? Oh, look, the thing that is clearly identifiable.
Yeah.
It just looks like a big red geyser.
Yeah. It's so fun, too, because I know that there are a lot of subglacial lakes in Antarctica that are completely cut off from the outside world. And a lot of those subglacial lakes don't even have like an output. So anything could be going on down there.
I didn't look this up, but I wonder if that lake will ever run out or if it's like recycling.
Oh, I wonder, yeah.
That's a very good question.
I mean, there's a lot of water coming out of it. You would think it would deplete it eventually if it didn't have a replenishing stock.
Well, I read that it's like under extreme pressure, which is why it like comes out like that. So, yeah, I wish I could go there. I think we should move on to our second question for this week, which is, could elastic Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man powers work?
I mean, quick answer, no.
Yeah, short answer is no. If you're assuming everything the characters have ever been depicted doing, just flat out no. But I do want to explore to what degree could we emulate the idea of stretchy powers, or also other aspects that the characters have beyond stretching, because there's some of that too.
Well, we'll get to Plastic Man later, but
okay.
My main thing about Mr. Fantastic is I feel like it kind of depends on what you think is going on with him anatomy-wise.
Ooh.
For example, a lot of the ones that I've seen as far as the official Marvel encyclopedia or handbook or whatever is that he still essentially has the same biology underneath everything. Like when he's stretching, it's not that this is classic 626 Mr. Fantastic. When he's stretching, it's still muscle over bone and whatever. It's just that he's increasing or decreasing the space between his atoms or whatever. However, with the Ultimate Comics, what's going on is his skin or things of that nature is essentially holding in, it's almost like in a liquid state. It's almost like a case on the outside. Even his internal organs have basically just turned into one large nutrient sack.
He's a latex glove filled with soup.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is Mr. Fantastic, of course, is... Early on, it was a little bit more malleable, but essentially what he's stretching is ultimately the same outward container, I guess. I'm not quite sure of a good way to describe this.
So I think Jim hit the nail on the head as a latex glove, because I want to jump in because what you just described fits very well with a thing I wanted to bring up, which is, I don't know how many of you remember Stretch Armstrong.
I literally wrote down Stretch Armstrong.
Well, in the Stretch Armstrong line, Stretch Armstrong had a villain called Vac Man. Okay.
Okay.
Huh.
Vac-Man was filled with, I forget what it is, but it's like beads, like the bead gel kind of material.
Oh, okay.
And he also had a pump in him with a little vacuum pump. You
okay,
could
yeah,
suck
yeah.
the air out. So if you stretched him and then sucked the air out, the elastic would vacuum tight constrict on this foamy material, this like beady material, and he'd to some degree stay in the position or shape
Mhm.
that you build him into. And I was thinking, obviously we couldn't do this with muscle on top of bone, but if you
Right.
had hydraulic powered telescoping bones surrounded by this kind of material, you could internally elongate a limb and then expel all the air from it, keeping that shape. I'm stretching. This is a stretch.
I get
Yeah.
it.
That was
Like compression versus a stretch, almost like the Ant-Man
Yeah.
discussions before.
Mhm.
yeah.
One of the things that I think is most interesting about the superpower of being stretchy is that you rarely see this comes into play occasionally, but you really rarely see them being stretched to a point where it's now starting to cause them physical damage. A lot of times you can see them stretched to a point where it like hurts, but I've never seen like Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man ripped in half. You know what I mean?
Depends on the writer, I think, because I've seen sometimes it's like, I can't stretch any further, and then other times Mr. Fantastic can stretch his whole face around the earth.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing also is that Mr. Fantastic, I kind of alluded to this earlier, Mr. Fantastic and Plastic Man have entirely different
They
powers.
sure do. You are correct.
Okay.
Yes. So those of you who might not know, E.L. O'Brien, who is the titular Plastic Man,
Yeah.
his thing is not that he stretches. His thing is that he transforms.
Yep.
His individual atoms, whether or not you think of it as Mr. Fantastic can stretch himself within his confines of his dimension, Plastic Man can turn himself into all manner of things.
Yep.
He has in the past turned into an airplane, has turned into a chandelier or like a painting on the wall.
Mhm.
He's something that whenever, he makes jokes and goes around, but when he leaves the room, Batman and everyone else looks at each other and says, "This is terrifying." I hope he never realizes the extent of what he's able to do.
Yeah.
I have seen a snippet. I think it might be from Injustice, like a comic run of Injustice, where Plastic Man is basically kind of telling Superman off a little bit, and everyone's like, "Oh, Superman's going to kill him." It's like, he might not be able to.
Yeah.
And I just think that's fascinating.
Plastic Man's kind of on the same level as like the Mask in that he has cartoon powers. Like he can turn into a bouncing ball, he can turn into a jackhammer, which doesn't make any sense. But there have been attempts at Plastic Man cartoon adaptations. They always lean further into like Looney Tunes than any other Justice League adaptation.
Yeah.
In the Lego Marvel video games, it always drove me insane because they would have Mr. Fantastic essentially used as Plastic Man.
Yes.
It would do things like he would turn into giant water pails or whatever, and I would always get mad and be like, "Those powers don't work that way." Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see because they start in the same place, but the interpretation is different. Or I guess the direction is different because Mr. Fantastic, I really tried to find a better word to use here, but Mr. Fantastic attempts a more realistic interpretation, a more scientific, and none of those, it's still ridiculous. But they have the comic book science fiction approach instead of the hyper fantastical Plastic Man approach.
Well, even with Mr. Fantastic's abilities, they do try to keep it within the science mind.
Yeah.
along with the thing that I had mentioned as far as a nutrient sack with Ultimate Mr. Fantastic, there was an interesting side thing that was admitted at one point where Mr. Fantastic said that he was folding he was putting even more folds into his brain on purpose to use the stretching powers to make himself smarter.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about another shapeshifter that I think is an interesting thing to tackle, especially with everything that we've talked about, because if you look at someone like Clayface,
right,
it's the same kind of idea. Your body is malleable and you can create different shapes. And I read that, I've never seen this happen. I've not read a lot of Fantastic Four, but I've not seen this happen. But I've read that Mr. Fantastic can allegedly change the shape of his face and disguise himself as other people.
That was early, yeah.
It was early? Okay. Well, so that was the original Clayface as well. He wasn't a giant mud monster. He was a guy who could mold his face to look different. And they took that.
Like a Lon Chaney.
Right. It was, and I think it was based on Lon Chaney. And it was, that idea is kind of the same starting point as person with malleable body. Yeah. And they've just all gone in different directions to the point where Clayface has turned into the giant mud monster who can make, I don't know, venom weapons, right? And I wanted to mention that in Batman the Animated Series, Clayface is still depicted as being able to take human form, and he describes it as though he can do it, but it's difficult to hold, and it's like tensing a muscle. That stuck with me for some reason.
Yeah.
I remember that actually being something with Mr. Fantastic as well, because with stretching out, if I remember correctly, stretching almost feels more comfortable to him, depending on the interpretation. But if he has to like hold himself into normal human proportions or whatever, that's when it becomes kind of a discomfort. I think it may have been something that was mentioned with Mystique as well.
That's interesting. You know, that actually kind of makes sense if you think of it in terms of wanting to take the path of least resistance, and it being easier to relax than to contract. So like pulling and tightening up would be contracting, which is the opposite in spiders, which are hydraulic powered, and they have to extend energy to extend their limbs.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting that we're talking about different shapeshifters, because one of the ones that I was looking at that we haven't mentioned so far is actually Luffy from One Piece. Yeah. And I'm actually really glad that we talked about Plastic Man first, because I suppose this might be construed as spoilers for One Piece. It happened a couple years ago now, but I don't know how people feel about One Piece spoilers, to be honest with you.
So
but
it's still like 10 years into the series, though.
Oh, it's pretty close to 30, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the premise behind Luffy's powers is that he is not made of rubber, and apparently he still has all the normal bones and muscles and organs inside of him, but all of them have rubber properties. So like his bones will stretch, his muscles stretch, his skin stretch, like everything is stretchy. And that's how his powers have worked for many, many, many years. And very recently, in One Piece, Luffy is able to do sort of loose transformations that are called like Gear 1, Gear 2, Gear 3, and things like that. And recently-ish, he was able to achieve Gear 5. And this actually ties into the overarching plot of the series, where it turns out that the devil fruit that he ate that gave him his powers was not the gum fruit. It was something else that turned him into the sun god. I think it was the sun god. I'll have to check on that later.
I think I remember hearing this.
Yeah. But so the sun god's powers are actually like Hanna-Barbera cartoon powers. And so like, not only does he get way more stretchy and expressive and emotive, but also he can like slightly warp reality so that it is very much like he's in an old-timey cartoon. And so I'm glad you mentioned that with Plastic Man, because it reminded me of Gear 5 Luffy. And I was like, oh yeah, because Luffy, also has stretchy powers, but his is just that he is rubbery as opposed to like, that he has like a nutrient soup inside of him.
Right. I like how different interpretations of how the power works ends up taking the characters in vastly different directions.
Yeah.
Like Flat Man kind of has the thing. Are you guys familiar with Flat Man?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So Flat Man is flat. And his thing is that he has the ability, of course, to stretch and everything, but he's still, depending on the writer, is just 2 dimensions. Like he can stretch, he can kind of change himself into maybe origami or whatever, but everything has to come from the center of being flat. There's not anything super complicated he can do beyond just stretching and doing whatever that is within that dimension.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And sometimes he gets mailed to the relatives of the school children so that they can take pictures with tourist attractions.
Right.
His name's Stanley.
Okay, you know what?
Actually, I think Flatman's real name is Matt, if I remember, because he's like a doormat.
I think so. Yeah.
Created by John Byrne.
Oh. The other thing speaking of Luffy, the other thing I was very interested in is sort of like what the weaknesses are of different stretchy people, because sort of inconsistently, but here and there, this is applied to Luffy where he does have a vulnerability to things that are sharp. And so spiked clubs and swords and knives and things like that will actually cause him to be cut. Mm-hmm. And I was interested in looking up sort of what Mr. Fantastic was weak against specifically. He was the one I sort of focused on because I figured there would be a lot of lore about him, and the fandom wiki did not disappoint. But it seems like Mr. Fantastic has the ability to modify the density of his body, and so he's able to stop bullets and contain explosions. I didn't really see anything specifically about weaknesses other than sort of being overextended, basically.
In the film, at least the original one with Tim's story, their thing was that he can be frozen, which being super cold was something that messed with him, which makes sense because when Jack Kirby and Stan Lee came up with the characters to begin with, the attempt was to make them each one of the elements.
Right.
Essentially, the Thing was supposed to be a rock, which makes sense, like Earth, Human Torch, fire, with the idea being that the Invisible Woman was air, and Mr. Fantastic was supposed to have the properties of water, like with being able to change his shape and whatever. But more and more just kind of went down to being rubber-based, which, of course, is why the super cooling worked for him.
Yeah.
Because they went through a stint of, rather than it being elements, they wanted it to be, they're all sort of plausible ways that the human body could be different, which of course is already an unbelievable thing. But
right.
I do really like that though, just because I am familiar with liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this affects things that are rubber, like hockey pucks and racquetball balls. And, it makes sense that liquid nitrogen would kill Mr. Fantastic.
I was watching Terminator 2 yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
The scene when the liquid nitrogen tanker crashes into the building and then you see liquid nitrogen basically raining throughout the room and the T-1000 walks through it. And this is before he gets flooded with it. But I was like watching this and I was like, oh, I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend being flooded in liquid nitrogen. No. But
That's what happened to the guy at the end of GoldenEye. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it was liquid oxygen, but still, it's not much better.
That's colder? Is that colder?
Yeah, liquid oxygen is a little warmer.
Okay.
It's like minus 270 instead of minus 321. So, like, it's not really an improvement of any sort.
It's not a noticeable difference for a human, though.
Yeah.
In a different James Cameron movie, The Abyss, of course, the way to be able to sink down to the deepest that you can was to submerge them in essentially liquid air, which was something that was supposed to work. I'd be curious to maybe add this to a future vaguely scientific episode. What liquids would you be able to be submerged in theoretically where you could be like, this is fine? I mean, other than water.
Did we talk about that before?
Lungs.
I feel like we did, and I was having the same thought because I don't remember. I'm going to have to figure that out. Listeners, please write in if you know what we're thinking of.
Yeah. Tell us what episode we did this.
Can you breathe liquid oxygen or something like that?
Yeah. But I do think that's a really interesting concept because that is something that I feel would really unlock a lot of the, what would you say, like diving applications.
Yeah.
Because I know that a big problem with diving and like deep sea exploration is the bends. And so if you had a pressurized liquid that you could submerge or even like high G space exploration.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a very interesting idea. So one of the other things I was thinking about is just sort of the idea of the stretchiness of an individual and how far they could stretch.
Okay.
And I was mostly thinking of, I'm sure that you've all had them and probably all the listeners have had them. You know, you go to one of those little vending machines and you put the quarter in, you turn it and you get like a little stretchy hand.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The hand is sticky and you smack it against something and then you pull it off. Because a lot of the depictions of various heroes, whether it's, you know, Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man or Luffy, it's like they have quite a lot of stretch to them. And specifically Mr. Fantastic, I think it said could stretch 1,500 feet. And I think that
I don't like that.
Yeah, right. A, it's terrible. And B, I think it's really worth pointing out that I don't think that a human body could stretch as far as comics depict them as stretching, because there's not that much mass in you.
If you remember that at some point in the Marvel Comics history, they said that the Human Torch can emit a power equivalent to the sun. So I think we know they exaggerate a little bit.
Yeah.
Nah.
But I just think it's so interesting because I was trying to look at my arm and think, okay, if I doubled my arm's length but kept the mass consistent, how skinny would my arm get? And I'm sure there's a mathematical formula for this. I wasn't really able to find anything, but I was probably asking completely the wrong set of questions. But I feel like if I doubled the length of my arm, it would probably get to be like around a quarter the diameter. Like I'm sure it would be sort of like a logarithmic decrease, but I don't know that for sure. But I think that you couldn't really stretch someone all that far without them getting really, really, really thin. And you never see that depicted in any of these, really.
Right.
Unless they're under a tremendous amount of duress where they're being like pulled apart physically.
There is one that I have listed, and you honestly just reminded me of it, because I was looking at slime molds a little bit in preparation for this. And so, as a tangent, slime molds move through hydraulic-like system pushing cytoplasm through a network of contracting tubes. However, they don't have skeletons, and they move incredibly slowly by human standards. But slime molds always make me think of Venom, which I mentioned Venom a little bit earlier just as an allusion. But now, Jim, you talking about that, keeping the mass consistent. There's a thing that used to always be depicted in Venom comics, at least in the 90s. I don't know if they still do it because I honestly haven't read a Venom comic since the 90s. But in Marvel vs. Capcom, which is my biggest familiarity with the character anyway, he's always drawn as Eddie Brock in the Venom suit. And every time he does an attack where he transforms and sends like a giant mouth at the opponent, or his tendrils go across the screen, it's always shown that like the symbiote leaves a part of his body to then extend outward. And that's a detail that I've always really liked. And I don't think they do it anymore. At least I haven't seen it. And so that in my head, it was like, yeah, if he's got a suit covering his whole body and he wants to make a giant blade on his right hand, he's got to
Yeah.
take some of that matter from somewhere else. And I just always really like that detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept because it feels more in line to me with what you would expect to see happening.
Right.
And you really just don't see that with, like, one of the things that I think is really fascinating about One Piece, again, sort of not to keep harping on that one, but I do think it's really interesting how Luffy has a big fight and then he eats a ton of food and then his belly's really big because he's a rubber guy.
Yeah.
Like he eats like 3 cubic feet of food and then he's got a big tummy. And that just makes sense to me. And then I don't know where that food ends up. I don't know, but because he
burns
like
it
2
off.
scenes later, 2 scenes later, he's back to normal.
It's the Goku thing, like eats
Yeah.
a lot and then goes out and fights. And so you never have to like exercise really. I mean, he is exercising all the time, I suppose.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Flash has a super powerful metabolism.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see more, I don't even want to say cartoonish, but like more exaggerated deformities whenever one of these characters stretches. But I think on that same token, then you have to also acknowledge the fact that their mass isn't changing.
Right.
And so they get really long and skinny and gangly, but they also hit the same amount. So not really that much, to be honest, unless you accelerate with a sort of like a rubber band technique where you spring back and then snap forward.
There's a comic that I'm trying to remember the name of. It was a Spider-Man comic where the whole idea, it was some sort of zombie or horror thing where Spider-Man finds Mr. Fantastic and uses him to he puts him into his web spinner and spins him out, and it's super almost thinner than maybe fishing wire, and he used them to hold the city back together, and it was super painful for him, but I don't know, it worked.
I don't like that at all, and whoever wrote that should not be allowed to write superhero comics.
I can't disagree.
I haven't read that specific thing, but your description of it, I was like, all of that is horrifying.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I think it's kind of funny.
Well, I'm laughing.
Yeah. But also in a way that I can appreciate where it's like, oh yeah, of course that's a stupid idea, but it worked, right? And I'm not explicitly going to question the logic of it. So I think one of the things I think is most fun about this question is something that Jeremiah mentioned earlier. And that is just the idea that there are so many different ways that you can approach this exact same power.
Yeah.
And because we talked about 4 specifically discrete ways that this power works. And I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. There's a reason it keeps being done, right? And, and the characters are like, there's also the Elongated Man, who is a DC character who is closer to Mr. Fantastic. And he's just not as famous as Plastic Man. So whenever you see Mr. Fantastic and his DC counterpart, it's got to be Plastic Man, but really it's not, but just nobody knows who the Elongated Man is.
Who could possibly care?
Right? Well, in the CW Flash, they did have the Elongated Man in it, but they made him more like Plastic Man. They just wanted to use obscure characters, I think. All right, we got to wrap up. Does anybody have any last things?
Not that I can think of.
Just latex glove full of soup. So I want to go on that one.
I think that was apt to describe. I don't think we needed to continue the conversation after that, honestly. We're just filling time from that point on.
I just think it's fun to think about the fact that that's a really good way to explain what's going on. Because when you start thinking about how all of these organs inside of you are going to be shifting and reorganizing, and I feel like we just talked about this not long ago on the podcast, but the idea that when you're pregnant, this baby grows inside of you and it pushes all your organs up. And then it takes a few weeks for them to kind of drift back down into their right spots. And you could feel some of that reorganizing happening. And stretching those organs around in your body, you're going to be feeling that in the morning.
All right. Well, listeners, let us know this week. Why do gremlins keep stretching our organs around in our bodies?
Good question.
If you have thoughts on that or anything else that we talked about this week, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook, or you could comment on the YouTube feed that comes out concurrently with the release of the podcast.
I do have a quick question before you go. If I exit the window that you guys are in, since you're stuck in the internet, you're going to be fine, right?
Yes, but we're still trapped.
Okay.
Yeah.
So untrap us.
Yeah, so I don't expect you to do it immediately, but if you could get to work on that, since you're the first contact we've been able to make.
Yeah. Does your computer have a CD
fine.
drive?
No, it's pretty respectable.
Oh. I was hoping you could just open the CD drive and we could walk out. But
How about this? Whenever you're done, I'll just drag and drop you into something that looks helpful.
just not the recycling bin.
Okay.
Speaking of making contact with more helpful people, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listeners. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other great places the cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out. And so does telling your friends.
Tell your friends we're trapped in the internet.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. Threadless is always adding new, different types of merch that you can stick our designs on, so check it out, see if something new's cropped up.
And thank you to Jeremiah for being our guest this week.
Hey, thank you for having me, even though I didn't know this was going to happen. I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop you.
All right, well, for Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Jeremiah, and click.
Happy New Year.
Toodaloo 2025.
Good riddance.
That's because you cannot handle pressure, as Billy Joel would say.
Under Pressure.
It's like that is
that's
not
a different
Billy
80s
Joel
song.
song.
A different song. That's just the first one I thought of. Speaking of a different thing that we thought of, maybe I don't know if that was lazy or what. We should
it's not
probably
the worst one
move
you've ever
on.
done.
True, but I don't know if that's a compliment or not.